Hello, my beautiful friends. I hope that you have been doing amazing since the last time we talked. I hope that you have been thriving and evolving, trying new foods, experimenting with new tea. Maybe you're looking for a new constellation in the sky to stare at. You know, the possibilities are endless. But I hope nonetheless that you have been doing well. I came with a surprise. Shit. Don't tell anybody, but I took some notes for today's video because I think it's a very important topic. I believe once becoming aware of the stuff we're about to talk about, it can be life-changing. And not only do I want to help you, but then I also want you to be able to help others when the time may come, okay? So you may ask, Sarah, what the hell are we going to talk about today? Well, my friends, we are going to talk about grief and the process of grief, what to expect. And the reason is, I never had somebody sit me down and talk about this stuff. You know, I feel like some of us may never expect to experience grief at a young age or even into our young adulthood. We never really know when it's going to come. And from my own personal experience, I believe that I learned about grief and what to expect from it way too late. And if I would have been sat down and somebody would have had this conversation with me, I really feel like it would have helped. And that's not me saying I regret any part of my journey or my path so far. I just feel like it's been a little bit chaotic and wild and crazy, due to just my lack of knowledge and, you know, just lack of experience as well. And another reason why I wanted to be the one to have this conversation with you is because when I was young, just an early teenager, and I was smacked in the face with some crazy experiences, the doctors I would go see, the therapists I would talk to, the friends I would talk to, the adults I would try to get advice from, nobody was going through what I was going through. And some of them hadn't even experienced the type of, you know, grief I was going through. So their advice never sunk in. It never helped. It never worked. And I honestly felt like I was just talking to somebody who had no idea where I was coming from. They had no idea what they were talking about. And their advice just, it didn't sit well with me. And I felt lost. I felt misunderstood. I felt crazy. And I just wish I would have had either a book or somebody sit me down and have this conversation that we're about to have. I don't ever want any one of you guys to ever feel like you are alone, or, you know, that the advice or things that I talk about are coming from just out in the air, you know, from a textbook or something like that, from somebody else's story or something I learned in school. These are my personal experiences, and I have been through so many strange events firsthand that I just feel very confident with being able to have this conversation with you. And I promise, you know me, I'm not going to talk about something that I know nothing about, basically. Somebody's like, dude, really? Come on. Do you remember that one video? But I'm just kidding. So I just think that this is such an important topic. Again, I think this should be talked about in school. I think that, you know, we should introduce children to it at a very young age, especially in the world of social media and an algorithm that is just feeding our brains. But yeah, so that's why I wanted to talk about this with you. I think it's very important, and sometimes I feel like there are individuals who may be out there, and although they are just trying to help, they're doing the best they can. Sometimes, you know, we'll kind of be like, you just don't get it. So, you know, I wanted to share my experiences and my understanding with grief and its process and what to expect, because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't even know what grief was. I didn't know the difference between grieving and having depression and being sad. And grief is such a big umbrella term that I feel like that's why a lot of us may not really know the ins and outs of it or what to expect. So I hope y'all are ready. Like I mentioned, just grab some tea, maybe grab a blanket, grab your puppy or your kitty, and let's have a nice little conversation. First, I want to start off by let's try to define what grief is. What does it mean to grieve? Well, grief is a deep sorrow. It is a normal response to a major loss. You can feel distressed. You can feel like you're suffering. It's an immense sadness at the expense of a significant loss. And something that is so important that I want to drill into all of our beautiful brains is that grief is not limited to death. And I want that to be so, I want to scream that on the highest tops of the mountains, the tops of the Capitol building. And I just want the world to know that we don't just experience grief when we experience a death of a loved one. It's so much deeper than that, and it's so much more complex than that. And I think that's so important to just note firsthand. Grief is it's an immense sorrow and sadness for a significant loss. And a loss doesn't just mean death. So, I thought to myself, I've experienced grief in other aspects and dimensions of my life that have nothing to do with death. And at that time, I didn't know that I was grieving. I didn't know that the emotions I was feeling and confronted with was just a step of the grieving process. And again, I wish if I would have known that, I feel like I would have had a little bit of just weight lifted off of my shoulders, and I would have cut myself and those around me a little bit more slack. So what can be some of the events that can lead to a person experiencing grief? It can be death. It can be the death of a loved one, or it can be the death of an animal. We can also experience grief if an animal runs away, or if we have to give up an animal for adoption. We can experience grief when it comes to education, when it comes to graduating, when it comes to leaving high school, when it comes to graduating from college. We can experience a significant sense of sorrow or sadness or suffering because we're no longer in school anymore, and we love it so much. It's our comfort zone. And even the idea of never seeing those teachers again, or not maybe staying in touch with friends, that can be a huge reason for somebody to start grieving. And that even brings me to the loss of a friendship. We can have a fallout with a best friend, or even, I remember a little personal example. I felt immense sadness and grief when I knew I was no longer going to see my doctor that I was seeing after my brain injury. We can experience grief after an accident, after breaking an arm, after a car crash. We can experience grief with aging, We can sit back and look at our life and say, dang, I was so happy when I was a little girl. I miss those days. I miss Sara. And we don't see that as being a form of grieving. We can also experience grief when our parents get a divorce, if they do get a divorce, or when our sibling moves out of the house. We can experience immense sadness, and it's because we're losing something significant to us. We could lose a diary that we've been writing in for so long, and we feel crushed about that. We can lose a favorite stuffed animal toy from when we were a little girl, or say we misplace a pair of shoes or our favorite skirt, and we have no idea where's this frustration and madness coming from? Why am I feeling this? We can also experience grief during an actual breakup, say with a boyfriend or a girlfriend. We can experience the grief over a relationship gone, or the idea of a relationship that we were destined, that we thought we were going to have. And now the idea that, dang, that's not my future, we can grieve over that. And I never had somebody tell me that you can grieve over the past, future, the present. I always thought you could only grieve over something that happened in the past. But you can grieve in the present moment for things that haven't even happened yet. Another thing that I added on my list was we can grieve if we failed a major test or a major exam. There can be immense sorrow and sadness if we happen to be held back a grade. So there's so many reasons that we can grieve, and it may sound like I was just being silly, but I only associated death with grief. I never associated, the idea of me leaving this house and the sadness and the sorrow that comes with it as one of the steps of a grieving process, even though I'm grieving something that hasn't happened yet. Another thing that I wrote down on my list is some people may see it as something minuscule, and that's why we look at it like, well, how come I feel this sadness? And that's okay. Everybody is so different, and the way people will experience and process grief is so different. So you might even experience grief at the end of a TV series. You can experience the grief at the end of a book or a book series. You can be like, dang it, I don't want it to be done. How is, like, you may even, you can't even believe it. You're like, what? Wait, no. And so you kind of see what I mean when I say that grief is such a big umbrella term for so many events that we can experience in life. And to think that there could be somebody out there of any age trying to diminish their feelings or belittling themselves and suppressing the feelings that they have because they don't think what they're experiencing is serious or intense enough to be sad, to be depressed, to cry, to grieve, to feel sorrow and suffering. And I don't want anybody to ever feel that way. No child, no adult, no old person. Grief is grief. And as I mentioned, it's a completely normal response to a significant loss of anything, of a person, a place, a thing. And I wish somebody would have told me. Now it makes sense why I was so sad to graduate high school. Now it makes sense why I was so sad and lost when I found out I could never do gymnastics again. I was grieving, but I didn't know that, and I didn't know the steps and what to expect through that process of grieving. So that's what I want to get onto next. Is what do we expect? Okay, so you told me all of these things that can cause me to grieve, cause me to feel like I'm suffering and misunderstood and all of these things, but what now? I'm aware that grief can be caused by so many different things. What can I expect? Well, many years ago, there was a woman named Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she was kind of the first doctor, author to make a book about grief, and she became known as educating the masses about the 5 stages of grief. And that's kind of where society started to become enlightened about how deep grief can be, the depths of it, how vast it can be. So I want to give a huge thanks to her, because if it weren't for her, we may have not evolved to this stage of being humans that can understand and process grief at this sort of level. We're becoming more aware, more alert, more educated, more understanding. So while doing a little bit of digging into the research behind grief and what to expect, that's who I stumbled upon. She's kind of the starter of it all. She put the key in the ignition and was like, y'all, let's get ready to rumble. And as I was kind of listening to some other people and some other doctors explaining grief and the 5 stages and steps of grief, I kind of was like, hold on. A little light bulb went off and goes, no, that's not really good advice. That doesn't help somebody who really may be misunderstanding grief or experiencing it to its core. So while I was listening to some of these doctors, I was just realizing how they made it seem like these are stages and steps. Like, first you're going to go through this, then this, then this. Like a staircase. It's sequential. We're going to beep, 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 beep. And when you make it to the top, you did it. You succeeded. You're over grief. That's how they were kind of making it out to be. And I love that it's considered the 5 steps or stages of grief, but I just want to kind of put it out there that what I still am experiencing is that these can come in any order, any of these 5 stages. You may not experience them in order. You may go from 1 to 4 to 2 to 3 to 1 to 2 to 1 to 5. But they're not, I don't want you to feel like when I list off these 5 stages, steps, expectations, that they have to go in order, or that if you are experiencing them out of order, that you're crazy or you're not grieving or anything like that. So just a disclaimer, I don't want you to feel like A, B, C, D is how it's supposed to go. It's a wild roller coaster, and with there being different emotions inside of just the process of grief, I never expected that. So when I was feeling the different stages that I'm going to go through, I just thought I was crazy. I didn't know that I was dealing with grief, So what are the 5 stages of grief? What are the 5 things to expect our little human nervous system and minds to go through after the significant loss of anything, a person, a place, a thing, or an idea? Okay? So the first experience and the first expectation that we should have when dealing with grief is denial. We will be in disbelief. We will be numb. We might even cackle at the universe and say, this isn't happening. This is a dream. And that is a normal response. It is so perfectly normal. And the reason why denial is such an important step, process, emotion of grief is because it's our brain's way of trying to give our nervous system and our minds a break from the chaos so we can start to process what just happened. It may sound weird, and to think that we might run into somebody who's dealing with grief and they are denying it happened. They're just saying, this can't be true, this can't be true. It's a very important step. We gotta start somewhere. The healing process has to go somewhere. And that's just a little trick that our mind will play. And that's healthy, it's normal. I remember I was in such denial that my mom was even sick to begin with. I used to tell myself, there's no way, we're still gonna take our summer trips, we're still gonna be doing all of these things, she's gonna heal, she's gonna be one of the cured. I was in denial. I thought everything was a dream. I remember I used to tell myself, things will just go back to normal. And I remember I was even experiencing this when graduating high school. I told myself, there's no way. How did 4 years fly by like that? I loved my teachers. I loved my school. I loved the relationship I had built with so many of my peers. I couldn't even imagine all of us just branching off into different colleges. People maybe changing their phone numbers. Maybe people only relying on social media that I don't have or don't use or won't use. I was just in shock. I was numb. I was like, this isn't happening. Even though it was. Even though reality was right in my face, my brain needed a break. I needed to start the processing somewhere. I remember I don't know why, but when I turned 23 years old, I don't know why that age. At first I thought it would be like, oh, 21 might be weird or 25 might be weird. But I was really weirded out and in denial at the fact that I was no longer a teenager. I was no longer 21, like a fresh little 20-year-old. I was like becoming an adult. And I was just like, there's no way. There's no flipping way. There's no way. I was very, 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 very numb and in disbelief when I broke my pelvis and the doctor said, there's no gymnastics for you ever again. The sports are gonna be, you're gonna have to be very careful. No. Denial is a shock absorber, you guys. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. If we do have a loved one or a friend who is in a stage of denial, it's us. It's up to us to be there for them. We don't need to prod at them and say, no, reality, wake up, be in reality. That's not our job, you know? And that's another thing I wish I would have known, to be able to be more sympathetic and empathetic for other people who are going through grief. Denial is not just gonna pick one person or the other. Everybody can go through denial. And again, it's just a healthy response. The nervous system is going through so much turmoil. It's doing the best it can to just help us, to just protect us. And I think that's honestly beautiful. It's magical. Our minds are such a complex thing. So to think that when we're going through grief, our nervous system and our brain will give us this small little break, a small shock absorber, to get the healing process turning, to get it going. And I just wish somebody would have said, that's normal. It's healthy. It's okay. But what's not okay is staying stuck. We cannot stay stuck in denying the fact that the inevitable happened. It may be hard, but we cannot stay stuck. Because if we stay stuck in denial, if we stay stuck in disbelief, and we stay numb to the reality, that will result in unresolved grief. And unresolved grief, I'm going to get into, that's not what we want. Grief is a process, but as I mentioned, we cannot stay stuck. And this is coming from my personal experience. Staying stuck is going to hold us back way longer than it needs to be. And sometimes awareness is all we need. I wish I would have just been a little bit more aware that I was in so much denial. Because then I maybe would have just been able to like push a little bit of just the next steps, like what's next, you know? I just feel like it would have helped my process of grief start rolling a little bit more smoothly, a little bit more calm. Because as I mentioned, we don't want to stay stuck, and we do not ever want to stay stuck in denial of anything. We don't want to stay stuck denying the fact that we just got broken up with. We don't want to stay stuck in denying the fact that we just got fired from a job. I remember I was going through a whirlwind when I lost one of the necklaces that I had purchased for my mom and I. They were matching necklaces, and one said, "You are my sunshine," and then the other one said, "My only sunshine," because we used to sing that song when I was little. And I lost that necklace, you guys. I lost it. And I cannot tell you how badly I was in denial that I lost that thing. I was like, there's no way. You're just gonna find it. You're gonna find it. There's no way. It can be a sentimental object that we are in denial of losing. And I honestly wish that I wouldn't have denied the fact that I was in denial, because I just wasn't aware of what it was. I didn't understand its characteristics. I didn't know that I was just grieving and that was a process of grief. I was in denial that I was in denial, and that's just that's like trying to hula hoop without a hula hoop. You're like, what the heck? So yes, one of the first expectations that we need to have with experiencing grief is knowing that we will probably experience a sense of denial. The next emotion, the next step, the next characteristic of grief that we should be aware of is anger. And anger is honestly, it's to protect us to an extent. I was listening to a video, I think his name was Counselor Carl. I could be making that up, so sorry if it's not. But he explained in one of his videos, talking about how anger is a huge step of grief. He said this quote, "Focusing on the blame distracts us from the pain." We can be angry at the universe. We can be angry at ourselves. We can be angry at another one of our family members. We could be angry at a teacher. We could be angry at a boyfriend. We could be angry at God. But if you think about it, he is so right. Sometimes when we're focusing on who to blame or what to blame, we're taking away from some of the pain. It's almost like it's a distraction. We're kind of distracted from reality. I know I did that. I know sometimes I still find myself over here like mad at the universe, and I'm just angry. And sometimes I don't know why. And I'm over here asking myself, why are you so angry? Like, do you have an anger problem? No. I'm going through the perfectly natural, healthy process of grief. That is anger. And you have the permission to be angry. That's another thing. When we feel these emotions, that's sometimes what I want to do. I don't want to feel angry, so I try to suppress it. Or then I get mad at myself for being angry, you know? One of the things that I've grieved over is the fact that I never finished college. I tried so hard, and it's still an endless possibility, but when I see my friends graduating from college and moving on to their dream jobs, and I'm just like, I feel like I'm over here stuck, and I'm angry, and I'll blame the universe, I'll blame the school system, I'll blame my car crash, and I'm just like, I'm blaming, and my anger is so heavy. And it's just because my mind is taking my nervous system and my thoughts away from the pain of, of the situation that's really happening. You can even have survivor's guilt and be angry at the fact that, yelling at the universe, like, why didn't that happen to me? Why'd they have to go through that and experience that? Or why am I still alive experiencing the pain? We can be angry about that. But as with denial, we cannot let anger overwhelm us. We cannot become bitter and angry and stay stuck being angry. I know it is so much easier said than done. I promise it is so much easier said than done. But we have to put in the effort, the awareness, and be there for ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves and others when they're angry. And that's another thing. If you have a friend or a family member who is experiencing anger as a result of grieving, be understanding. I know sometimes we may take it personal and think that we're doing something wrong or that we can't help the situation. We might even get angry at them for being angry at the situation, but we have to be understanding. We have to know that this is a normal response to trauma, to a significant loss. We're only human, you guys. Another thing I'm angry at myself at is events that I have missed due to either my mental health or just my inability to get up, to get out of the house. I've missed so many important family events. I've secluded myself at times so badly that people just no longer reach out if an event did happen. So there were baby showers that I didn't know happened until Somebody else told me that they saw it on Facebook, and I was so angry. I was angry at myself. I was angry at the universe. I was angry at the people involved for not letting me know. Like, I was so angry, and I didn't understand why. But now that I can look at it with a new lens and see how the grieving process is so big, I'm simply grieving over the fact that I've missed special events. I lost out on those experiences, you know? But I can't let that anger stay stuck, because imagine what else I would miss out on. I want us to be aware that anger is a huge, huge normal process when it comes to grief. But as every emotion we're about to talk about, we can't stay stuck. Now, the next process, next step that we will experience while going through grief is something that I know I went through, but I didn't know that's what this was called, and I didn't know it was a normal response to a significant loss. And that is, it's a process considered as bargaining or undoing. We're trying to make a deal with the universe, with other people, with society. We're trying to basically focus on every little detail, seeing where things went wrong, what we could have done to fix it, what we didn't do that now caused this X, Y, and Z. There was a time where, I don't know if you guys remember, but I had angelfish, cute little angelfish, and they were mating and making babies. Okay, it was the coolest thing. And the babies were so tiny, and it's so hard for them to survive. Like, the parents will sometimes eat them. They'll eat each other. Sorry, this is, this is not where it's supposed to go. But long story short, one of them survived, and I transferred him from his mama and dad's tank to his own baby tank in my bathroom. And I just had the most beautiful energy in there. I was taking care of this little baby guppy. I watched him go from just being this small little blob with a glowing stomach to an actual fish who's swimming around. And I named him Little Rascal. He got big, he grew out of that tank, so I moved into the other tank. And one day, little fella just didn't make it. He just didn't make it. And when I tell you, I was like pen and paper. Where did I go wrong? What did I do wrong? How did I go wrong? How did I fail this little guy? I was so upset. I was trying to undo things. I was talking to the universe, and I would say silly things like, I promise, like, I will try it again. Please, this time just give me a chance. I was like bargaining with the universe. And I didn't know that that was natural. I even remember before my mom passed away, she was still alive, and when my dad was still alive, I would bargain my booty off to God, to the universe, to whoever was listening to me in the ether. I would say, I will never do X, Y, and Z again. I will never talk to this person again. I will never eat this again. I will do anything. I will get a job. I will go back to school. I go, just please don't do this. Don't do this to my parents. Don't do this to them. And you know, then when I started thinking about it, I was like, why are you being so selfish? What is this? What are these thoughts you're having? And why are you talking to the universe like this? I've never talked like that before. I was trying to do what I deemed as unacceptable. I was thinking that there was something in me that could fix this, whether it be fix something that happened in the past or an event that's destined to come in the future. I was just trying to bargain and undo it. And I didn't know that was a natural process of grief. I didn't. I thought I was just out here, you know, hoping and praying for the best. I was so obsessed with every single detail about how my parents got sick. I remember I was obsessing over what they did wrong. So I was even trying to undo what they did. I was like, well, dang it, my mom did this when she was in her 20s. My dad did this when he was in his 30s. Blah, 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 blah. Maybe if this would have happened, maybe if I would have just given them a special medicine, maybe if I would have had them go vegan. Like, I was just trying to fix everything. And I didn't know that that was a natural process of grief. I had no idea. And if I would have been told that, like, hey girl, this is what to expect. If one day you're down your grieving journey and you just start like talking to God and you're trying to just undo everything, or you're just fixated on everything, you're not crazy, you're not psycho, you're being healthy and you're being normal. But as I mentioned, we can't become obsessive and we can't stay stuck in this stage of grief. And I'll be honest, accepting the fact that we can't fix what happened can be one of the hardest things to go through. It can be one of the steps that lasts the longest, is accepting the fact that we can't fix or change what's happening. And that's tough. That's really, really tough. But as I mentioned, being aware of this, so when this does happen, if it does happen during our grieving journey, we can kind of say, okay, it's okay. It's okay. Awareness is key. Moving forward is key. Okay? And also, as I had mentioned, if you do have a safe person to talk to, always talk to them about how you're feeling. If you're like, dang, dude, I'm over here just bargaining with God. I know I'm not going crazy, but it's just one of those days. It's also very important. It's very important that we don't seclude ourselves. You know, just reach out. Sometimes you guys are just reaching out to me. Just me through a comment on my YouTube videos. I tell you that all the time. If you ever need somebody to talk to, just leave me a comment or email me. Our comment section will always is my goal to just be an immense safe space. I'm so sorry that there's so much noise out there. We can be a huge support system for ourselves, but also don't ever, ever, ever hesitate to just reach out to somebody. Just reach out. It could even, if you don't feel comfortable talking to somebody, you could get a special journal where you're either talking to the universe or you're talking to yourself. A place for you to just jot down the things that you don't think anybody else would understand. That is something that with every single one of these stages, getting it out of your head and onto paper or just out into the universe is so helpful. It is so helpful. Because when it's just spinning around up here, oh my gosh, it turns into a tornado and a tsunami and a typhoon. Okay? So, we've covered denial, we've covered anger, we've covered bargaining. So what is the next thing that we can expect while going through grief? Well, my friends, that is depression. This is so important, okay? When I was learning about this stage of grief, I'm telling you, my eyes opened, my wings, like, I felt like a hawk. I was a peanut butter falcon. Have you guys seen that movie? But I was literally like, oh my gosh, where was this when 15-year-old Sarah was over here thinking she was too depressed that she would never crawl out of the darkness? Depression when dealing with grief is not the same as clinical depression. When I was 15 years old, I thought I was clinically insane and clinically depressed, when in reality, I was going through the grieving process of being depressed. And they are so different. They are so different. But as I had mentioned, this is where I say it's so important that we don't stay stuck, because unresolved depression during grieving will result in clinical depression, in unresolved grief that will travel throughout your lifetime. Okay, so this is why I say I think it is so important to talk about this with all age groups, because age plays a huge role in how we're going to handle grief in general. When I was handling grief as a 15-year-old little girl, as to how I'm handling grief as a 45-year-old plus woman, night and day, my friends. Night and day. While experiencing depression through grieving, it's short, okay? And that's not something that I ever understood. And it's a really hard pill to swallow when we're in the depression stage of grief. Because I promise you, it feels like there is no light at the end of the tunnel. But that is where we have to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves, because it will turn into clinical depression. And I have a feeling for a fact, if I wouldn't have understood that there is a difference between being depressed while you're grieving and clinical depression, I felt like it would have just made a little bit more sense to me. Nobody, it's like nobody had told me that this will be short-lived, but it's going to take so much action and dedication and hard work to push through it. It is going to take really, really hard work. And I also feel like this is an important stage to understand, because I would used to beat myself up if I found myself being happy and being carefree and laughing and living my life so close to the incidents of losing my mom or going through something very traumatic. But I used to feel like because of the fact that I had dealt with such a significant loss that my depression had to last, that it would be weird for me not to be sad. And if I wasn't sad or angry or crying, something was wrong with me. So that's where I feel like this stage is pretty important, because it's almost like there's two sides to it, you know? It's hard to understand, like this is from my personal experience. It was hard for me to accept the fact that my depression is allowed to be short-lived, because if we're not careful, as I said, we can remain stuck. And it's a little bit easier, in my opinion, to remain stuck than it is to get unstuck. You know? When I started becoming an adult and I was able to sit and marinate in my grief a little bit more, I started to understand. I was like, okay. I was just a little bit confused on the depression side of grieving, and that's why I was having such a roller coaster of emotions as a teenager. You know, because you're going through the process of being depressed, and then you're going to go through the process of becoming undepressed from the grief. And as I mentioned, these things can happen in many different ways. We may be in denial, and then we might have depression, and then we might be angry, and then we might find ourselves bargaining with the universe, and then we're in denial again. But it's understanding that we have to be careful and make sure that that depression has a short lifespan, or it will become clinical and it will be a lot harder to handle, manage, and control. And this is from personal experiences. Now, the last and final step or expectation that I would like to cover today is acceptance. And this stage or process or experience of grief can be seen as when the temper tantrum is finally over, when the kicking, the screaming, the shouting, the fussing has sizzled out. And what I wish somebody would have told me was that it's still going to hurt, just in different ways. When we experience it. So of course, my card is full. I'm over here like, can we finish my video? Nope, card is full. So, means I've been talking for too long. But with this stage of acceptance, you guys, when we go through such a significant loss of anything, a person, a place, a thing, an event, an idea, there's no such thing as closure. And that is tough, but that's reality. And that's where I say we will still hurt, we'll still feel pain, it will just be in different ways. A loss will affect us forever. It really will. And that part of acceptance is a big deal, because it shows us that there is still the other side of the journey to experience. It's okay for us to focus on the present and the future and not just stay stuck in the past, not just stay stuck on the night that it happened, the week that it happened, or how it happened, you know? And it will take time. It will take so much time and self-love and self-understanding. But nobody told me that acceptance during grief is accepting the fact that it's time to live a new normal. You know, we can't change what happened. We can't erase the feelings that we now carry inside of us. So we need to understand that it's okay to walk with our head held high and understand that it's time to live a new normal. That normal we previously knew it's no longer here. And that's okay. It's a process of life. It's a part of our destiny, you know? We're right where we're supposed to be, even if it's a little bit painful or a lot of bit painful. My new normal became the fact that I was the one who was going to be taking care of this house and the animals. You know, that was my new normal anymore. I had to accept the fact that when I come home, mom and daddy aren't going to be there waiting. Mom and dad aren't going to be there cooking me dinner or helping me remember to put gas in my car, you know? So I had to accept the fact that I have a new normal. When I finally got to the stage of accepting many different things that had happened in my life, not just the loss of loved ones, I noticed that I started doing things that I used to do before everything happened. I started gardening again. I started reading again. I started wanting to work out and stretch my body, do makeup, you know, go shopping. I was just telling my friends the other day, I went shopping by myself for the first time last week since my mom was alive. I've gone shopping with friends and people, but I've never gone by myself. And I was like, whoa, it's been like 10 plus years, but I'm finally accepting the fact that it's okay for me to function like a normal human being. It's okay for me to open up my front door and venture out into the world, you know? But I can't tell you what the heck it's taken. And I'm still in the process. As I said, I still experience some of these emotions sometimes all the time, you know? But I have such a new understanding and awareness for it that I'm just like, this is making so much sense. And me gaining an awareness of this is helping me not stay stuck in each of these 5 experiences when I find myself front and center in them. When I'm in denial, I can notice, I'm aware of the fact that, okay, this is a normal response. What am I experiencing? Why? What am I grieving at this moment? Because it could be a number of things, and some of us might not really put that into consideration either. We might be grieving over something that is different than the grief that we have over the loss of a loved one. We can be grieving over multiple things at once. Geez, are we complex beings. So yeah, you guys, those are the 5 steps, the 5 expectations that I wanted to talk to you guys about. Denial, anger, bargaining/undoing, depression, and acceptance. And like I said, they don't go in that order. They can, they may, but that's not an expectation to have, my friends. I wrote down a couple quotes that I had heard that I thought you guys might appreciate. So one of them, it's been going around a lot recently, and I'm very happy because I had only heard it like last year. But it's the quote that goes, "Grief is love that has nowhere to go." When I say it went ding, 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 ring the dang bell on that one. Grief is love that has nowhere to go. Eventually, we have to let it go. And as I said, it's still going to hurt, just in new ways. And we're going to have to learn what it's like to experience a new normal and strive in our new normal. But you know, we got a lifetime ahead of us to do this. We've got practice. We've got time to practice. Time is of the essence. I'm just kidding. Do not listen to that right now. Honestly, when I say this, I want you to know that we, you, me, we are all strong. We are very, very, very strong. And you may not want to hear it, but we are stronger than the tragedies that front and center themselves in our life. Sometimes it may not feel like that, but let me be the one to tell you and to remind you of how dang strong you are. You really are. You've gone through a lot. You've processed a lot. And some of us, most of us, have been processing stuff that we were never even shown how to process. It's like we're over here all trying to teach ourselves how to ride a bike. Nobody's giving us training wheels, and we're just like, oh, damn. But we got to be proud of ourselves for the fact that we keep pushing, we keep pedaling, and more importantly, we get the heck up when we fall down. We can't stay stuck. No, we can't. Just like riding a bike. Imagine if we just laid on the ground the first time we fell off. We would have never known how to ride a bike. We would never been tearing around the neighborhood, running amok. There's no finish line to grief either. So don't act like this is a chase. No. A chase nor a race. Okay? And we're not in competition with anybody, even ourself, our past self or our future self. It's not a spiral. It's not a circle. It's literally, I drew what grief is. That is grief, okay? Another thing that really helped me, you guys, was my first thing were all of the times that I know I've fought through grief, things I still grieve over, things I push through. You guys, one of the things on my list is I had to go through the grieving process of listening to Christmas music again because I decided to name my childhood cat Noelle. So then every time I would hear her name, I would cry, I would bawl my eyes out, and Christmas was ruined for the little girl. You know, some people would laugh at that. An adult might laugh at that. I think my dad kind of was like, oh, it's okay, we can change the song. But it's just, you know, it's so interesting. Another thing I remember I grieved over. So real quick, if you guys, I've been talking for way too long. Like I literally don't even have room on my card to talk anymore. So I'm finished with our talking video. I really thought that it was important. I really think this is important. I was never talked to about these things. And even though to some, maybe it seems a little silly, like, well, duh, what did you expect? Sometimes we don't know what to expect. Remember, expect the unexpected? We talked about that like a few months ago. What the heck do we expect out here? But what we can expect is that it is going to be one hell of a ride. We will not walk out of here with our hair slicked back and our teeth white, okay? Maybe some of us will. Life is going to be a wild journey. And, you know, a lot of us as kids, some of us were blessed to have just an innocent, happy childhood where we were sheltered under a dang rock. And, you know, we were never even prepared in our wildest imaginations for what life has to offer. And it feels like a big old smack in the face. And I promise you, I know how that feels. I still feel like that. That's why I'm even in the grocery store and sometimes I just stand there and stare at people and I'm like, what are we? What are we doing? I wanted to have this conversation with you, you know? Big sister, little sister conversation. We can all teach each other something. So I just wanted to talk to you guys about that. I also wanted to let you guys know that you are not alone. My goodness, you are not alone. Just please know that you are loved, you are cared for, that everything's going to be okay. Everything is just a process, but we have to go through a process. This is a big test. We got to evolve, you know? And our little interdimensional being that just buzzes inside of our chest is going to be really proud of us when the show's over. And it's so temporary and it'll go by so fast. So we also have to remind ourselves of that. Although the journey does seem long, painful, endless, like what in the world? It goes by fast. And that's why we got to be careful and we can't stay stuck in any of the stages of grieving, you know? If we do, that's okay. Heck, I've snapped out of it and realized I've been damn stuck. You guys have helped me snap out of it before. You're like, dang girl, snap out of it, get over it. But I'm just joking. Yeah, I was gonna start rambling about like silly little reasons why I would grieve, or things I've found myself grieving over throughout my life. But that's like could be a video on a whole nother topic. No matter how silly or large it feels, write down a significant event or a loss of anything that has happened to you. And I promise you, you'll look back and be like, wow, not only did I make it through that, but each event helped me get through the next. And I think that's also amazing. We can learn from our mistakes, we can learn from the experiences we go through, we can learn from other people's mistakes and other people's experiences. Yeah, I really think that writing down this list can help us see how much we've pushed through, that we are fighters, we're warriors, and we've got this. I think I want to make a video all on its own about grieving over ourself. I know that may sound really silly, so let me know in the comments, does that sound like a stupid topic? But I literally, like, you know, for like my example, I had my car crash and I am still trying to accept the fact that my old life is not attainable anymore and that my personality has changed immensely. And, you know, I feel like we don't just have to go through a traumatic freaking accident for us to realize how much we've grown and changed as a human, as an individual. And I think that would be a nice video to talk about. I haven't taken notes on it. That just popped into my head. So I'll make a note to myself so I don't leave you frickin' hanging. But yeah, I think it would be nice to talk about just the evolution of the self, you know? And that part of evolving can result in grieving over the person we used to be. Sounds like a nice thing to talk about. What you think? Okay, guys, so sorry this is so flippin' long. I did not plan for it. This is like not okay. But yes, I hope that you enjoyed. Sorry that the lighting isn't the best. That's not what we're here for. I'm kidding. Okay, so yeah, let me know about that video on the evolution of the self. And if there's anything else you guys want to talk to me about or want me to talk to you about, what should we talk about? Come on, give me some. As always, love you more than you will ever know. Please take care of yourself. Make sure you got sustenance in your belly and mind. It's got to be healthy both ways, okay? This is like our second brain. You know that, right? Okay, so peace, love, be gentle with yourself. Yeah. See you later.